everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Yeah, welcome back to Key Pacific's StrataLife, and we bring in the experts around strata living and what you can expect if you've never lived in a strata. Maybe you do and you want some clarification. We have Drew Grout, Director of Strata Services at Key Pacific Property Management. In the last segment, we heard from Albert Atfield, Project Manager at CanStar Restorations, and joining us is David Barrett, Managing Director of City Lock Systems. Now, David, can you give us basically the overview of that front entryway intercom? I guess it's also called an interphone. I guess, is that the sort of first point of protection securing a building?
Yes, it is. Just a little background on the name interphone, because a lot of people refer to that. BC Tel, back in the early 80s, developed that intercom that they put at the front of the building, and they kind of owned that market for many years.
So outside of BC, what did people use?
They had other brands or nothing, but it's quite unique. British Columbia is quite unique in the way that we secure buildings. If you go back to the East Coast, to Toronto, they actually have a vestibule, and the vestibule is open, and then the secondary door is locked. But it's just a different market here, and I talk to a lot of the intercom manufacturers, and they say British Columbia is unique in the way we do things. Primarily, we're doing elevator floor control integrated for visitor entry, and that has some unique challenges for the manufacturers. So as far as intercoms, you've got, sometimes you'll see an older building where you've got a lot of individual buttons, and you walk up to a panel with 60 individual buttons, and you push the button and it connects directly to the suite. Those are hardwired. There's wires between the front door and each suite. When BC Tel developed their system, they jumped onto the telephone backbone, and so they didn't have to run wires to each suite, so they were able to utilize the existing wire.
And the interesting thing, I know this because my mom lived in a building down in the West End, those older buildings.
Yes.
But it was a telephone-based system, as you're talking about. But the great thing is you didn't need to have a landline in the house. So she just had a cell phone. She didn't have a landline, but we found her an old telephone and plugged it in, and she could let people in and out of the building using that old telephone. And it would still ring and what have you.
Yeah, that's right, and that's called a no phone bill system. And so the strata doesn't have to pay for a landline to make the system work. And those systems are still around today. It's quite common to install in some buildings. And it's a unique thing about that system is that a lot of people on the council don't want people to be able to call a cell phone and unlock the front door from Hawaii. Yeah. So those systems have a place in the market. They certainly cost a little more to install up front, but...
well, the most annoying thing is when someone says, come to my place, but they forget to tell you what suite they're in. So you can't find the suite based on... you have to phone back. What number am I going to? But that's just human error.
Right. And so and a lot of buildings will have a different code to dial than their suite number for security.
The suite number,
Yeah, so there's a lot of different strategies that have been employed over the years, but primarily that's the first point of entry is the intercom. You have challenges with people following visitors in or tailgating through.
Yeah.
We can get to that a little later in the discussion, but the intercom is primarily the first point of entry for visitors, couriers, especially with today with the buying online, there's a lot more couriers coming to buildings. So it's still important to have an intercom at the front of a building.
But there's no real way to stop somebody, as you call it, tailgating, opening the door and following in. I guess that's protocol inside the building. Someone has to say to you, who are you? Why are you coming in?
Yeah, that's correct. There's the strategy that we employ for that is that we treat the lobby as almost a public area, and then we secure the building after that. So let's say someone does tailgate, we control the elevator floors, we control doors into the parkade, we control the exits.
So what is the advantage or disadvantage to having the telephone-based system and the big keypad that you mentioned with all the different buttons?
Well, there's no advantage to that unless the building is built that way. If you wanted to change over afterwards, the cost would be astronomical.
Well, once that system's hardwired, as you mentioned, into the building, is it fairly maintenance-free, or is it something that needs an update?
When it's installed well, It's fairly maintenance free. Unfortunately, when renovations happen in units, people damage the wiring, and if it's not repaired properly, or if the joints aren't done properly, over the years they fail, and then we've got a completely different problem to deal with, trying to troubleshoot a problem that may or may not be enclosed behind the walls.
Yeah, we encountered a difficulty sometimes with some of the systems where the competing service providers have to go in and do some wiring in the panel room, so to speak.
Yes,
and they really don't pay too much attention to what the other company had before them, and often we'll find a wire that's not reconnected or whatever. But it's
that's
too many people going in and accessing this stuff, and you never can be sure who's done what.
Yeah, that's a common problem with the no phone bill system, where it uses the in-house wiring. And you've got all the other service providers, and they have rookie technicians that come in and hook up, and they probably don't understand, why are those wires going over there? I'll just punch them down here.
Yeah.
And so 3 weeks later, someone comes to the building to use the intercom, call the suite, and it doesn't dial. And they don't relate the two things being connected, and we do have a lot of service work in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay, now what about somebody's had their intercom broken into many times? What can you do to secure the actual box itself? Is there something you can do to prevent people from breaking it?
Yeah, we can put a higher security lock on. For example, Medico make a pretty nice secure lock that we can add to an intercom. Some people add security frames and padlocks, and quite frankly, some of them look quite ugly because they've, it looks like a garbage.
It's overbuilt, right?
Yeah, it's locked up, and it just doesn't look right at the front of an intercom. The reason why people break into intercoms is they used to steal the postal lock out and then make keys, and they could come in at their leisure after hours. We put, we put timers on the postal lock. So when the post office come to deliver your mail, they can only come between, say, 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., something like that. And someone shows up at nighttime with the key, if they've stolen one or made a copy, they won't get in. The other reason why they're getting in, and the police have found guys with smartphones with the full program on how to defeat these intercoms. And so they're breaking into them, and they're trying to hack in to create, add new users to it. And they put their friend's cell phone number in, or someone's cell phone number, so they can call them and get buzzed in. They're on the dialer types. So anyway, we have workarounds to solve that problem, but the criminals are getting more sophisticated, and we have to always try to stay one step ahead.
So is it just burglars and people coming in, or is it just opportunists? I mean, are these organized people typically, or do you know, or is it just somebody just sees a door open and goes in?
When they're attacking the intercom, it's organized. They come prepared, and they know what they're doing, and they may set it up to come back another time. They may not even do the break-in at that time. But when we layer the building with different levels of security, we can stop them. Let's say they get into the lobby. That's all they're going to get to when the building's designed properly, when the security program is designed properly. We can stop them from traveling to the parkade or traveling up into the suites.
Well, that's the next question, because you talk about the foyer or the lobby being common area. Sure, somebody might be able to sort of tailgate past and get into that common area. But if you have an older building, like, for example, you have the next level of security where you need a key fob or something to get to a floor or to the parkade. If an older building doesn't have that, can it be retrofitted? And is it too expensive?
The short answer is yes, it can be retrofitted. The challenge sometimes, if the building is built in such a way that by locking a door, it contravenes the building code, then we have to have more creative.
So fire exits, all that sort of
stuff. Yes, you must maintain the exiting requirements. So, yeah, there are certain buildings that are really a big challenge to secure properly and to do that layering of security. But you can certainly do some. And in most older buildings, actually anything built since about 95 and 96 is usually built in a way that we can do the layering.
Now, is that sort of like the control pad for the elevator needs to be changed? Is that working with the elevator company then?
Yes, working with the elevator company to put a card reader in the elevator. We can, and it's interesting with the elevators, most older elevators won't have the correct traveling cable to add a card reader directly, and it's quite expensive for some stratas to go ahead and have the elevators upgraded. So we can do such a thing as a global unlock, which means the card unlocks all floors. It doesn't individually control a specific floor. So it's a lot less expensive to add a card reader on a global basis, or maybe just the parquet levels. And so we're able to do that. And it depends on the budget that the Strata has or what they're working with.
Well, here's a question. It says, our building was built 24 years ago. The intercom system is now obsolete. We no longer available to maintain it. Some people on the board are suggesting they move to a video intercom system rather than a voice system. Can you describe the options and features available, the pros and cons of going away from the voice to the video?
There are some advantages to go to the video system. And again, if you're dealing with an existing older system that's hardwired, that we have wire going to each suite, there are systems that we can upgrade where you get video over the same pair of wires. If you're dealing with a building that's got the traditional no phone bill or dialer system, what we can do in that case is we can implement where people use smartphones or iPads for their video portion, and they can use them in conjunction with the voice. So they kind of get a video, they get where they get a camera on the intercom, they get to see the picture.
That's probably the, visual verification is always the best. You know who's coming in and going out.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. When we come back, we're going to be speaking to Drew Grout. He is the Director of Strata Services from Key Pacific Property Management on StrataLife right here on CL 650.
This is Experts on Call on CL 650.